Hello, Team PYP. Mary Lou Kaiser here. Welcome to today's episode of the Play Your Position podcast. As promised, I am bringing you part 2 of my conversation with MiMi Chau. Part 1 dropped last week, and if you missed it, I recommend going back and listening to it so you can hear more of Mimi's story and what she's doing in the world. However, you can listen to this episode independently of hearing that one. So if you're new to the show or you thought, oh, this one looks really good, and you just jumped in, you can start here and go back and listen to part 1 another time. In today's episode, Mimi and I get into some pretty deep territory about things that matter to becoming more of who we are, to playing our positions effectively. Also, we talk about why intuition is such an important thing to develop as leaders of our lives, of our businesses, of our families. If you work in an organization, it's important to hone in on what your intuition is telling you for all kinds of reasons. Mimi takes us through a beautiful meditation, so you're going to want to be prepared for that. And if you're in a place where you can close your eyes, all the better. If you happen to be driving or doing some other tasks while listening, you can still partake and benefit from this beautiful meditation that she shares. We also talk about the power of understanding masculine energy and feminine energy, and why the two energies have nothing to do with your gender or how you identify. We also finally talk about falling in love and finding true love. And I bring up a concept that I'm fascinated with called third love. So you're going to want to stick around for that. Like I said, this is a jam-packed episode. You don't want to miss it. So if you are ready for kickoff, team, let's do this. Here we go.
This is the Play Your Position podcast, where we huddle up, call the plays, and inspire you to run your ball into the end zone. Are you ready to score more game-winning touchdowns in your life, business, and career? Then listen up, because it's game time, baby. Now, here's your host, Mary Lou Kaiser.
Yeah, I feel like this is going to be like the really fun part, because what inspired me is when we have like the conversation outside of it was just like, it was organic, and it was really like, I was like, oh, she's into what I'm into. And I think that's where we're going to open up space for women to really lean into their intuition. So what I wrote down here, this is really interesting that I want to dive in with you, like how we show up in our masculine, in our business, and in our feminine. Because what I notice is that when I'm more in my feminine flow is when things start to be very smooth and it just flows. And then when I'm more dialed in my masculine energy, then, things start to go a certain way that guide me back into alignment with my feminine. Because so what I'm learning is that we have either our masculine energy, that's our core, or our core is more feminine. So I'm more tuned in with my feminine. I don't know about you, but it's about like a 80%, 20% thing.
Mm-hmm. I'm definitely more tuned into the masculine energy and have since I can remember, which is really interesting. It has served
Cool.
me. Yeah, it has served me well
Mm.
in the professional life, not so well in relationships because, and for listeners who, I know there's a variety of people, I tend to stay away from pronouns because I think that just is a distraction. That's a personal, um, I think it's okay to just be human. However you
Yeah.
identify is however you identify, and we're all good in this. For as far as people have been drawn to me in all situations because I'm strong, I'm independent, I have confidence. I come across, especially when I'm in a room, I'm not I'm not the person that has to be front and center on the stage. I'm more of the quiet observer off to the side, and people are drawn to that kind of energy. But honestly, my energy is definitely has always leaned more towards the masculine, not that
Mm.
I'm a man. It's just that's how my energy is. And when I became a mom, that's when I really began to tap into the feminine side because I think just something shifted in me, the maternal, that primitive,
Mm.
deep, deep DNA stuff that just rose to the surface. And, the work that you're doing, Mimi, is so interesting because one, this is not something that we're taught in school. There is no class about these things. The school was set up, our American school system was set up in a patriarchal culture. So it's definitely more masculine energy at the secondary level. I think the elementary level tends to be more feminine because the children are young.
Yep.
And I think back to when I was in elementary school, most of the teachers in the school in the young grades, kindergarten, first, second, third, were women. You got to fourth, fifth, and sixth, and you began to see men in those roles. And then
Mm.
certainly by middle school and into high school. And I know that's not the really the topic of what we're talking about today. However, it does play into the what you're about to lead us through. So tell us
Yeah.
more about the intuition and the exercise you're going to have us do.
Yeah. I just want to pin what you said about elementary school because most kids are in their feminine essence.
Mm,
So you're guiding us straight into it as to when we're a child, we are coming from the heart, we're coming from our intuition, and we are all about play and creativity, and that is the feminine nature. And so a lot of kids are in their feminine, and it's, our environment and our parents as to how they nurture that essence within us, then we get into like the masculine wound or the feminine wound. And so there are essence. I love how you're leading us because it is about having a balanced aspect of the feminine and masculine that's within us. And so when you hear the divine feminine or you hear the divine masculine, it's a like balanced way, a harmonious way of how we're working with these two energies that's within us. So I'll guide into just, talking about until we are led into the experience of what the masculine energy is like. And I'll jam out with you in terms of like, what you think, and then tying back into the leadership. Because that's something we're talking to leaders here. We're talking about how we operate within our professional lives and
mhm.
then how we're operating in our personal lives. Because you don't have to show up the same way all the time. We can activate certain essence within us that we can show up in a way that is most supportive to us.
Mhm.
So, with the masculine, the divine masculine, it's a safe space for the feminine energy to thrive, to show up, and to create. And so, we can create a beautiful, safe, masculine energy within us that will support us into being the feminine, feeling emotional, expressive, creative, playful. And so I'm just, not talking about people outside of us, but this is all like our inner self as to how we can create these energies inside of us. And so with the masculine, it's very focused on freedom, purpose, and mission.
Yes, it is. And if you've ever done an exercise, a lot of times in professional development seminars or conferences, there's often a time when whoever's facilitating that particular section will say, "Okay, of these values," and they'll put them up on a screen of 30 or 50. which ones are the top three for you. And one of them, one of the values is always freedom, is on that list. And so is accomplishment or achievement. And freedom is one of my top three. It has been since I can remember.
Mm,
And there's a lot of power in that. However, at the same time, sometimes you have to activate the opposite of freedom, which technically would be imprisonment, right? That
mm,
sense of being inside of a very limited space where you can't just come and go as you please. And freedom actually, it depends on its opposite. Everything does. The whole duality of life is you need to have boundaries in order to understand what freedom really means.
mm.
And you have to understand feminine energy to really understand what masculine energy. So that ties into what you're doing with us today.
Yes.
And speaking of playfulness, oh, that's awesome. Yeah, so I'm
Yeah.
I'm curious. Again, the last time we talked, Mimi, you touched on these two energies, and you're right. I think part of growth is becoming aware that they coexist within us,
Hmm.
and becoming more aware of activate. I love that word you used, activating the different energies depending on the context of a situation. Certainly, I think of an extreme example like a head-on collision. Yes, I want to hear I'm going to be okay, which would be more feminine, but I want somebody in there, masculine energy, get me out of the car,
Yeah.
into the ambo, off to, that very intense, very precise. That's masculine energy. Then we can talk about you're going to be okay. Here's a
Yeah.
hug,
The
right?
nourishment,
The
the
nourishment, right?
healing, the
Right.
nourishment. Yeah.
Right.
Mm.
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And what's coming up for me when we're talking about the freedom, the purpose, and the mission, because that really aligns with me, of being a ambitious entrepreneur. And
Right.
so there are so many of us who are women CEOs that are more comfortable and are very activated by our masculine energy.
Mm-hmm.
We actually quite love that aspect in ourselves. I'm
Yes.
very purpose and mission driven. I I'm here for the freedom,
Right.
right? And on the other side of the coin, the feminine is love. She is
Mhm.
all about the expression of love, the embodiment of love. And that aspect of us is so beautiful. It's raw, it's vulnerable. When we speak, people lean in,
Mhm.
that genuine part of us. And talking about motherhood, I've realized too that our children, when they have that beautiful, precious energy of the divine feminine that they get to receive, how they flourish in their development, that loving motherhood connection between a mother and a child, that is precious energy. It's beautiful.
It is, and it changes as a child grows.
Mm,
It really does. It's still there, but the world becomes more external as the child
mm,
gets older. The way, again, I'm speaking in general terms here because certainly there are homes in which that doesn't happen in the same way. But generally,
mm,
in American culture, by the time a child hits 11, 12 years old, there's a greater awareness that didn't exist when they were 5, 4, 5, 6, certainly as infants and in the toddler years. But having raised both a daughter and a son, and allowing them to be who they are versus trying to make them something I wanted them to be,
yes.
it was really interesting to see how they shared things in common as siblings, as two beings created by the same people, obviously at different times, but also their uniqueness. and how each of them did on because we all do it. We're not aware of those energies the way you and I are talking about them as adults.
Yeah.
You just can't. And, culture is interesting because when I was growing up, I grew up in the 70s and 80s, things were shifting. We'd gone through the Cultural Revolution of the 60s. There was the whole ethos of sex, drugs, and rock and roll in the 70s, and also the Vietnam War. And
Yeah.
that shaped politics, that shaped culture, and then there was the women's movement, and there was the civil
Yeah.
rights movement. And those foundational pieces, I've often talked with friends, girlfriends of mine, we really were the first generation that had freedom as
Wow.
females. My mother didn't have what I had. We were told we could do more things. And as such, I think many of us gravitated towards more masculine kinds of opportunities because those had not been available before. And so it was natural for some to say, yeah, I want to do this. And what I find interesting today, fast forward, 40 years, I find it so interesting how there's a return to almost an extreme femininity, and you see it
Mm,
all over social media.
mm,
It to the point of where again, I'm about the pendulum settling. I don't think it ever stops exactly in the middle. I think the goal is to have it swinging slightly over that meridian, because
mhm.
you can't ever be fully in balance. That's not natural. I mean, our faces are not perfect. And again, social media, this
Yeah.
this drive for young people to go into plastic surgeons to say, I want my face to look like this, where it is symmetrical, where it looks like a filter.
Mm,
That is to me a dangerous territory, that it's a consequence of where we're at. So, which is again coming back to what you do, Mimi, and why this conversation
yeah.
is so important, is we need to have conversations about what it means, not necessarily to be a female or a male, but more about the energies that masculine and feminine bring, and that one isn't better than the other. And you're not bad if you are more aligned with one, for, if you, it's such an interesting time because this is what people are talking
Yeah.
about. And it plays
Yeah.
into leadership because people who are running companies are having to address this stuff, and they don't
Yeah.
know how.
Yeah.
They don't know how because it's not their worldview.
Right. Mm, yeah.
We can only bring to the table what we know. And then if we're open to learning, we want to be taught, we want to learn and grow together in a way that is a win-win for everybody. I'm not saying you
Mm,
don't have to compromise. You do sometimes. You have to give something up to get something. That's nature.
yeah.
So what would you like to lead us through today
Mm,
to get into some of this within ourselves so listeners can, I don't know, you can have us close our eyes and what do you got in
yeah.
mind?
Okay, so some of the things I would love to talk to you about today is really tapping into your intuition, which is a very big part of the feminine. It's getting out of our heads and more into our hearts, and that's really the intuition lives inside of our body. And so, it is about returning back to the sacredness of who we are as human beings, of being more in tune with our body than disconnected because our mind is overstimulated. And I created an offer for your community. And after when we got off the call, I was just thinking, wow, it would be so much more powerful if I'm able to lead you guys into the abundance meditation. That is something that I included into the PDF for the offer of creating a 30-minute intuitive morning routine, and that really help us connect into our feminine, because the abundance nature does exist and live within our feminine nature. So we'll do a quick meditation just to connect within. So, are you ready, Mary Lou?
I am, Mimi. Let's do this.
Awesome. Okay. So, Mary Lou and everyone who's listening to us, we're going to, if you're in a place where you can close your eyes, and it's totally okay if you're just listening in. So, close your eyes and we'll take 3 deep breaths together. That will help us ground. And what grounding means is that we start to relax. And if you're sitting down, you can straighten your legs, having your bottom of your feet planted on the floor. Your hand can palm face down or face up, whatever feels best. You straighten your spine, relaxing your neck. And we just start getting very comfortable being in stillness, slowing down. So we'll take a deep breath in our nose and breathe with me. Holding the breath inside our body, feeling more connected to our body as we exhale. Breathing in through our nose, holding at the top of our head. Exhale. With every breath, you're feeling very relaxed. We're getting used to being in a quiet space. Breathing in, last one, holding at your heart. Taking as much love as you need. And then exhale. We give love and we receive love. And in this quiet space, we're going to be activating our visualization and our imagination. So I'd like to invite you to imagine a golden light radiating at the top of your head. And this is the energy of abundance. As you're feeling this bubble of light start to radiate, just like a bubble, covering our entire body. Our body has an energetic field, which we also call the aura. And so imagine this energy of abundance radiating through our auric field. What does abundance feel like to you? And feel free to have a smile on your face because abundance feels beautiful, radiant. It's a birthright. We can take a breath here, breathing in abundance. As we're exhaling, releasing the abundance flowing through our entire body, every cell, every part of us. And as we're sitting in this space, activating our divine feminine, the divine feminine is about allowing, feeling the sense of spaciousness within us as we're connecting to the nature that's also outside of us. Imagining you're feeling the warmth of the sun, tuning into all the trees, the flower that exists inside of our home, outside of our home, connecting to the Divine Mother, Mother Earth, Feeling this energy radiating within you and outside of you. Feeling that sense of peace, that no matter what's going on in life, you can always return home into the space that exists within you, within your heart. And at this time, you can totally place your hand on top of your heart. The Divine Feminine is about us dropping into our heart. And take this time to have a conversation with your heart. How are you feeling? How is your heart feeling? Is there something that exists inside of us that lives within your heart, your essence? What is your soul would like to tell you today? And this is a time for us to experience our intuition. And all of us experience our intuition differently. Some of us experience it within a clear hearing. It's a voice that speaks within us. And we can tell when it's the chatter of the mind or if it is a message from deep within us, our spirit. And some of us experience our intuition within our visions, clear seeing. It could be the color that we see when we meditate. It could be pictures that we can translate into a way that resonate within us so we can make sense of that message. And some of us experience our intuition with clear knowing that defines logic because our spirit knows. And so there's time when you just know something. It sits right within your body. It just makes sense to you. Your clear knowing. And some of us experience our intuition within feeling. When we get the goosebumps running down our spine, our arms, and we know that we just are onto something, that our body is powerful. We can feel into things if it's the right thing for us, or it might be not the best decisions, then we can make a different choice. And so these are the different ways that you can experience your intuition. And now I'll speak out a couple mantras. Feel free to speak them out loud, or you can say it inside your mind. It is safe to be in my divine feminine. It is safe to be in my divine feminine. It is safe to trust my intuition. It is safe to trust my intuition. I trust that my intuition guides me to create the highest outcome for myself and for others. I trust that my intuition guides me to create the highest outcome for myself and for others. I love being in my divine feminine. I love being in my divine feminine. I am a divine being. I am a divine being. It is powerful to be in my divine feminine. It is powerful to be in my divine feminine. And lastly, I allow my intuition to be my compass and show me the way. I allow my intuition to be my compass and show me the way. And so it is. Allow yourself to sit in the state of openness, receptivity, and abundance for a few more moments. Feeling the power of your intuition and inner guidance. And you can plant a seed of intention in this moment. What is it that your soul craves that just put a smile on your face the moment you think about it? Take a few more deep breaths. Ground yourself to start shaking your body, your head stretching. Open your eyes and bring the sense of abundance and intuition with you into your day.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. I want to say namaste as with my yoga
Namaste.
practice. Yes. Oh, Mimi, that was beautiful. Team, I hope you are feeling the kind of energy that she just allowed us to feel. Wow, that was amazing.
How was that for you, Mary Lou?
It was great. We're recording this on a Monday morning, setting off the week. And, like everybody, I think I do a pretty good job of tuning into myself. And I also get busy. I loved that you said, just stop the chatter, because that's, what do they call it? Monkey mind, the chatterbox
Mhm.
that's always up there making us crazy. Got to do this, got to do that, got to run here, got to run there. Oh, I have this long list of to-dos, and what about this? And what you just allowed
Yeah.
us all to feel was that space for allowing, just,
Mm.
just the allowing.
And as you mentioned in the beginning of our chat today was that you feel like, you're more in your masculine energy. So I would like to address that with you and the listener is that the feminine can be very grounded as well. And she is in charge, she's powerful, and she just balanced within the two aspect of the self of the masculine and the feminine, that we can still be very structured and anchor, but allowing some space to be receptive. If it's someone saying, hey, I want to offer you something, or I want to help you.
Mhm.
I want to help you with something. I want to pay for dinner.
Yeah.
And or a compliment, you look beautiful today. And all we do is say thank you. I'm open to receiving that. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. And I have noticed when I'm out and about how many people struggle to receive a compliment or a
Mm,
gift. I've heard so many times. One of the most immediate responses that I have heard when I've given somebody something, oh, you didn't have to do that. That is not receiving. That's pushing it away. That's telling me that that person does not feel worthy of receiving. And it
mm,
always makes me pause. And, of course, it's not my job to I want to fix them, tell them, stop it. But people have to be what they are, what they are. But for people listening, if receiving a compliment is difficult for you, we're so good at giving compliments because it's a control thing. When we're giving, we're in control. When we're receiving, people feel out of control. And yet it is one of the most, I guess, controlled things ever.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm so curious to hear what you think about this, right? Because we're both very entrepreneur and we're driven women who can be, we love being our masculine energy. And so let's talk to our listener about how these women and like how our romantic life can be, and let's talk about manifestation.
Hmm.
Where yeah, this is like it's such an interesting topic for me because if the listener can't see me right now, but I have a big smile on my face, right? Because this is like so juicy.
Hmm. It
Powerful
is.
women and their dating life and or their relationship life. For me, it's being in my marriage.
Yes. It is, from my observation, really hard for high-powered, driven, ambitious women to be in a relationship first of all, to find somebody, whether, however they
Mm,
identify. I attribute it to there's not just one variable that is at play here. From my own personal studies of relationship and the my parents' marriage, which I was so lucky to witness. Um, I wish I had a magic wand. I could say I do believe that there is someone out there for each of us, maybe multiples, depending on what phase of life we're in.
yeah.
One of the concepts that I've recently learned about and am curious, so which means I read about it, is something called third love. I don't know if you've heard of third love, but the premise is that we have three main loves in our life. We have first love, which I'm sure everybody listening can remember your first love. And that love sometimes will be with you your whole life. But within that, you're going to experience second and third love. That's very rare. What this is more around is that you have a first love and you're young, usually young, and it's everything. You think it's forever and it's all that fairy tale and all that stuff, but it doesn't last. And then second love comes along, and that's the love that challenges us. That's the love that is going to, and also will not last, but it's powerful because it's a catalyst to massive growth.
Mm,
And then there's the third love, and the third love shows up when you least expect it. You're not looking for it. It doesn't look like anything you thought love would, but suddenly it's there, and it comes later. And you have to have gone through first and second love to get to that one. I'll
mm.
put a link in the show notes for this episode for some articles about third love, because it
I
really,
like that.
yeah, it's really interesting. And my parents they met at new teacher training at the same high school. My
Yeah,
dad was a year older than my mother, and he saw her from across the room, and that was it.
yeah.
That he pursued her, and she said since he died many times to me, "I'm so glad your father pursued me." You know, I'm like, "I am too, mom, because I wouldn't be
Mm.
here."
Oh my gosh.
I know.
Wow, this is really powerful, Mary Lou. I would love to take this opportunity to be extremely vulnerable in our conversation
Yes, please
about this
do.
whole aspect of this three love is very interesting. I've never heard of it. And as you already know me, it's been quite some time aside from my entrepreneur spirit journey. I've been on a healing journey as well.
Yeah.
So I've been doing a lot of deep, deep healing work, and actually it wasn't later, like now in this lifetime, that I figure out my first love because that wasn't my first boyfriend.
Hmm.
So it's like that young, innocent, very like, whatever adolescent love could mean. It's very
Yes.
innocent and beautiful. Um, and so there was a boy, I guess you could say like we met at the mall. I think we kissed like once. Like that was, and I didn't realize that was my first love. After the healing,
Mm-hmm.
I reflect on it because what I thought my first love wasn't my first love, and that was very healing for me. That I
Yeah.
had this innocent, sweet love. But the thing was that I wonder what this experience have taught me as a young girl because he ended up dating another gal and they were sleeping together. And at this time, I first kiss and all,
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't where I am. I was probably 14 years old. And so
Yes.
I wonder what that 14-year-old girl have learned in that experience.
Well, one of the qualities of first love is um it's the love that looks right. It just all of it feels like it's again forever. The fairy tales, we believe it's going to be our only love. Even if there's red flags, right? Even if we just it's interesting thing. And then falling in
Mhm.
love the second time, that's the hard love. That's
And
the love.
that was
Yeah.
my very abusive relationship that I can say it now from after all the healing
Mm-hmm.
that I received, that I was blessed to experience that because also it
Yes.
have led me to do the work that I'm doing now.
Right.
Um, that it was physically abusive, it was sexually abusive, it was
Mm-hmm.
emotionally abusive. It was terrifying. It was so
Oh, I bet.
hard.
It,
I Yeah, it's one of my most profound healing and moment was when I sat with plant medicine, sacred plant medicine,
mm-hmm.
and she has helped me heal in a way that I didn't have to relive my trauma. And then it was energetically, or it was so profound that it just cleared from my story where I
Mm-hmm.
actually don't talk about it very much. But right after that experience, I went on social media because I felt called to. I didn't do it for anybody but for myself, giving my trauma a voice. And it was profound in a way that Henry have sat next to me. We were both like just sitting down on the floor, leaning against the wall. He was right next to me. Here I am in front of the camera because I needed to share. And I said that I didn't know that my first boyfriend could rape me. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know that was a possibility, that
That's
was
right.
my experience. I had PTSD.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have lived with so much trauma and fear that I didn't know that was my reality. And it was so powerful because that was the time in my life that I got to learn self-compassion.
Yes.
I didn't How
Yes.
many of us don't even understand this concept of self-compassion, of holding yourself so gently and loving on yourself and having compassion for all the things that you experienced in your life that was so hard.
Yes. And again, our culture, there's so many wonderful things about our culture. And then there are some things that people like you and me are working to help move us forward so we can have conversations like this about topics that aren't commonly spoken about, in everyday conversation, right? But one of the tenets of this podcast for me from day one has been to give people a place to share their stories, to share their points of view on obviously leadership, but also on what it means to live a full life and love and understanding the different kinds of energy that we have at our disposal. That's the thing that's so powerful, is that meditation you just took us through proves that it doesn't take long to get into that state where you feel space, where you feel a seed of something, right?
Mm,
And I have found that when I stop trying to force something to come to me, whether, and I'm not saying that, a relationship or a new job or a new opportunity for my business or something, when I just surrender,
yeah.
all of a sudden it shows up. And that's what the third love is.
Yes.
You have the first love, which is the love that looks right because you don't know any different. Then you have the second
Yeah.
love, which is the hard love, which you
It's so
had. And
hard.
so many of us do, where there's a lot of pain and manipulation and lies. And
Mm.
we want to tell ourselves we're going to fix it. Sometimes there's elements of real and extreme narcissism, right?
Yep.
And
Yes.
abuse like you experienced. And it's the love that we wished was right, but it isn't. And
Mm.
until we can let it go, whether it's through an experience like you had or just through therapy or
Yeah.
a lot of journaling, then falling in love that third time, that third love, that's the love that lasts. That's the one because right? It's the kind of
And
love go ahead.
Mary Lou, and it's so interesting, right? The synchronicity, the serendipity of life, because you were there for my third love
Mhm. I know.
when you came and visited me at our first place together. Like you're literally in our home,
I know.
like our first place together.
I know. I know. And the dinner we had when we went out, the three of us went out, I still was so burned in my brain because we were talking about things that, again, most people don't talk about. And when you find your people who move on that plane of existence, again, you study this, there's low vibration. Everything
Mhm.
is energy, and energy
Yeah.
vibrates. And so the desk that my computer is on and your computer is on, this actually has energy. It's just moving so slowly we don't see it. And then there's the high frequency where and people are tuned into that or not. And you and I both know, Mimi,
Mm.
a majority of people are operating at a very low frequency. And it's
And that's the
because,
guilt, that's the guilt, that's the shame, the
Mhm,
grief that we haven't processed.
mhm, mhm.
Is the trauma we haven't cleared, and that's the lower. And so we then tend to numb ourselves with whatever that is. And
Netflix,
yeah,
narcotics,
alcohol.
um, nachos. Do the N words. But yes, we try to find a substance of some kind to put us into a state that we're familiar with. And that numbing is so dangerous because time passes by and you can't get time back. So the sooner you can, snap yourself out of that pattern of busyness and then numbing, busy numbing, busy numbing, and take the time to be still with yourself. Take the time to ask yourself, what is it that I really want from this life? Let
Mm.
me tell you, that's when, once I started doing that work, and clearly once you started doing that, that's when things really got interesting.
Yay.
You know what I mean? And it's because you
Mhm.
become open, and like attracts like. We often think, oh, it's opposites attract. Opposites make it sexy and, kind of like, oh, I mean, I don't want to be with a carbon copy of myself. I'm not interested in that. And if
Mm.
I want to, I get stimulated by people who are different than I am. But on an energetic level, I've got to be with somebody who is tuned in enough that we can move together. When we need time to rest, we rest. When we want to be active, we're active. Sometimes they're not going to mesh, but we respect, right? I read it also, speaking of the love, because I know there's women and men who want that so much.
Yeah.
They want that third love, right?
Yes.
They want that third love because by the time, again, my listeners, I know Team PYP, we've been through first and second. Might be in second right now, and not knowing what to do. And that's not my
Right.
expertise. My expertise is around self-leadership and self-awareness and having conversations that stimulate people to maybe think slightly differently than they
Yeah.
have in the past. And you have
Mhm.
done that for us today, for sure. Where do you see, I guess, what would you like to leave listeners with today after this wonderful experience. I'm just still feeling, so I feel that just alive. The whole body is tingling.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mary Lou, for guiding us. And what I want to leave the listener is my sincere wish for their aliveness in their life, of feeling alive, of excited to be living, to be creating, knowing that no matter what's going on in your external world, there is a home inside of you that is full of joy, full of peace, and full of abundance, and that we are energetic beings. And you're 100% right in terms of, if you're not into the law of attraction stuff, and that's all right, but it's more so of even thinking of it as we're like radio frequency, that we're dialing to tune in to a similar frequency. And so if you're calling in, love, then it's like dialing up that love that you have for yourself. I know that when I met Henry, I was in a state of like, I'm not ready to meet anyone. I'm just like so in a stage of solitude, of exploration within myself. And that spaciousness, right, it's how we call in what it is that we wish to receive, that openness and that flow. And then also, if something great is coming to you, if it's a business opportunity, if it's a friend, or if it's a love interest, then it's just opening up your arms and opening up your heart and opening up your mind to say thank you. I'm so grateful to receive. Thank you. And just from that state of gratitude.
Here at the Play Your Position podcast, we believe that the road to self-mastery and a life well lived starts with answering the call to leadership. That's when the fun really begins. Send this episode to any friends who might need to hear the inspiration and ideas you heard today. And feel free to rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform.